Thank you, Ellen. And now we have someone with us, Clarence Harrison. He's not quite as old as the rest of us, but believe me, his knowledge of the early days is remarkable. Well, Glenn says he looks almost as old.
Yeah, I'm Clarence Harrison, and I don't know whether a lot of you knew, my father had a livery stable here in Norwich, set down there about where Eli's house is now. And he ran that for till about 29, and then 28 or 9, and then we moved out to the river, on the river north of town, there for a year, and then we just moved all around over the country for a while. Finally come back to Norwich. So, been around quite a little while. And at one time, Norwich had 6 livery stables in here, and at one time, Norwich was right at 1,500 people. I'd hope it'd get to be that big once again, but I doubt if I'll ever see it. I went to school here in Norwich and 3 of the country schools around here. I don't know much more to talk about, so I better hand it back to Jeanette.
I'm noted for stories, and I'm going to tell you a real one to close. This was a real funny incident. And Sam Willauer was a brother of Will Willauer. And in fact, I rather imagine he was the first postmaster here. They lived up in the west end of town, and they had one daughter named Jenny Willauer. And she was a young lady at this time, and a good friend of hers was Sid Weaver, Hiram Weaver's wife. And you know, you didn't have fences, and you didn't keep out the dogs, and you didn't keep out the cats, and you didn't keep out the chickens. So there was an old neighbor rooster that came over to Willauer's house, and he crowed, and he was the biggest pest that you ever saw. And so Jenny and Sid Weaver said, that old boy keeps coming around here, we're going to get him, and we're going to have chicken pot pie for supper. So one evening, here comes the old rooster, just a-crowing and making a nuisance of himself. So these girls take a string about yay wide, and they put a kernel of corn on the other end of the string. So they throws it out there, and of course old eager beaver rooster, he comes up and gobbles it. Well, these girls start pulling on this string, you know. And the old rooster braced himself, but the girls kept pulling the string little by little till they got the old boy and they wrung his neck. And they had him for supper. Well, that night, you know, it come up quite a storm, electrical storm. And, well, as you call it, the outhouse or the back house of the John was out in the back. And Uncle Sam, it was after dark, and he had gone out there. And all of a sudden, the awfulest flash of lightning you ever saw just shook everybody. And Aunt Annie's wife said, now, look, you girls are going to get Sam killed just because we're being punished for killing the old rooster.
Jeanette, do you mind if I tell a couple of stories? Marguerite's going to shoot me. Dad has told us several stories. I wish I could remember all of them, but I've got a couple that relate back to, I don't know how many of you remember Uncle Dan Holder, which was John Holder's brother. That was Dad's dad. And he lived out, well, I guess you call it the Varnum place. Used to be out south of Norwich, southeast of Norwich. And back in those days, when there wasn't any means of transportation other than horses and mules, there was no automobiles. A man's prized possession was either his horse or his mule. And Uncle Dan was very proud of a mule that he had. And Dad tells this story to be true. Maybe Penny will tell him whether it's right or not. But one night in the middle of summer, it was very hot. And Uncle Dan is very scared too of robbers and people that might come up and try to either steal his chickens or, come into the place, maybe steal his mule or his horse. So he kept a shotgun at the kitchen. And this evening they were sitting in the kitchen and they heard a rattle at the door, and the first thing Uncle Dan did was jump up and grab his shotgun and approached the door and says, "Halt! Go away!" And there was still a rattling at the door, and so he yelled again, and the noise or it didn't go away, so he just up and pulled the trigger and shot through the door, went out and looked, and he shot his prize mule. The mule had come up to the doorknob to lick the salt off the doorknob. Now, is that true or not, Dad? That's right, he said. Now this one, I don't know, you can take this one with a grain of salt. He said, we don't know what cold winters are. That it really was so cold back in, when, 06, 07, or what? When was the coldest winter, Penny? He don't know, but it was just cold. And he said, we really don't know what cold winters are. And the reason he knew was that about the first time they had automobiles, they used to have those spoke wheels, on them. They were spoke instead of the nice looking ones like they have today. Real cold, and he said it was so cold that you know how a dog will go out and lift his leg and approach a tree or a fire. They didn't have fire hydrants back then. But anyhow, he went up to this car wheel and raised his leg and got first to the car wheel, and when they started off, they beat him to death. I don't know whether you want to believe that one or not. But says that's hard to believe. Anyhow, I wanted to say that I have enjoyed knowing all of these folks, and of course I'm not as old as they are. Would it be interesting to see just how old they are? Would they mind? You girls mind telling us? Clarence, how old are you? 71. Hazel? 83. 91. 83. 82. He was born in 99. Figure that one out. And that'll be 92 in June, next month. Now you add those up and you've got one whale of a bunch of years. Put them all together, and what these folks have done and what they've been through is something just sit down and listen to and enjoy. I'm glad I've been a part of it and enjoyed all the things that they have told and the things that they've done. Makes me feel like sometimes we're living in an age that we've missed a heck of a lot. Thank you, folks.
I'm sure there's other stories around there that could be told. So if anybody has anything that would be of interest to the people, why, just feel free to step up and we'll give you your time. Nobody wants to volleyball. You have a tennis racket, you have a tennis court.
Now is it cut?
There'll be a ball game possibly later on. And if you do one and you try to go swimming, you see it being used for a too. So